I don't think anything really prepares you for the silence. I mean, after all those years in the army, I figured I could handle anything. I'd heard rockets scream over my head at 3 a.m., had buddies bleed out 3 feet from me, and spent nights staring at a dirt ceiling in some makeshift barracks wondering if tomorrow was going to be the day I didn't come back. But none of that, not Fallujah, not Kandahar, hit like that damn silence when I landed back home. 12 deployments. That's how many I'd done. My last one was supposed to be my clean exit. I'd even told my CO I was hanging it up for good. I missed being with my kids. Missed their soccer games. Missed birthdays. Hell, I even missed their dumb little arguments in the back seat during a road trip. That was supposed to be behind me. Rachel knew that. We'd been married 13 years. She was with me when I was still a broke sergeant trying to fix a leaky water heater between drills. She sent me care packages, cookies, letters in that curvy handwriting of hers, drawings from Sophie and Caleb. I carried those things with me like armor. I thought I was fighting for them. So when I touched down at McCarran and turned my phone back on, I was expecting a welcome home, or a picture of the kids holding a banner. Maybe a selfie of Rachel smiling with a cold beer waiting. That's not what I got. All I saw was a text that said, "Don't come home. It's over." And then, seconds later, "The kids don't want you either." That's it. No explanation. No call. No warning. Just silence after that. I stood there in the middle of the terminal like a damn statue. Soldiers passed me on either side, hugging their families, taking photos, tearing up. And I was just standing there with my duffel bag and my boots still laced tight, like I hadn't even made it home. I didn't call her. Didn't text back. I walked outside into the dry Nevada air, hailed a cab, and told the driver to take me to a hotel. I didn't cry. I didn't punch a wall. I'd done too much of both over the years. What I did do was take a long, scalding hot shower, shave my face clean, and open my laptop. Then I called Donovan Price, the best divorce attorney in Las Vegas, and told him I needed representation immediately. I wasn't going to roll over. Donovan asked me if I had a place to stay. I told him the truth. I'd been gone nearly a year, and for all I knew, my wife had changed the locks. He asked if I'd gotten those texts in writing. I told him yes. He said that was a start. By noon the next day, I'd signed a full legal retainer, and Donovan was already drafting the initial papers. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. Control. My children. Sophie's 12. Caleb's 9. I've missed so much already. The idea that Rachel would tell them I was gone for good, or worse, that I'd left them on purpose, made my stomach twist. I didn't know what she'd been telling them. I didn't even know where they were at that point. My house. Her parents' place. Some other man's house? I had no idea. That night, I ordered a ribeye from room service and sat alone with a yellow notepad. I started writing out everything I remembered from the past year. Rachel's emails. Her change in tone. The missed video calls. The times she forgot to bring the kids on FaceTime. Little things that felt off, but I'd dismissed because I was 7,000 miles away and trying to stay alive. I thought about the last photo she'd sent, the kids in Halloween costumes. Sophie was a pirate. Caleb was some kind of robot. I remembered thinking Rachel wasn't in the picture, which was odd. She used to love dressing up with them. That's when it really hit me. She hadn't been waiting. She'd already left. I was the last one to get the memo. I spent the rest of that week setting up a war room in that hotel. Separate phone line. Legal contact list. Secure cloud storage. I wasn't just a soldier anymore. I was a father on a mission. I didn't care if Rachel hated me. She could hate all she wanted. But no one was going to make my kids believe I walked out on them. I didn't know what her angle was yet. Didn't know why she'd go this far without a single conversation. But I knew one thing for sure. She fired the first shot. And I don't lose wars. I've always believed you don't go into a fight blind. That's the quickest way to lose, thinking you can just swing wild and hope for the best. In the Army, we planned everything. Objectives, weather, enemy movement, terrain. We didn't make assumptions. We confirmed them. So when Rachel sent those texts cut and dry, just don't come home, and the kids don't want you, I didn't let myself get dragged into her mess. No begging. No arguing. Just silence and strategy. I called Trent. Now, Trent isn't just some buddy from high school. He was my forward observer for 2 deployments and now runs a private security firm out of Arizona. If you need someone found, followed, or background checked to the ends of the earth, he's your man. There's not a more careful set of eyes I trust. He didn't ask many questions when I called. Just, you want eyes or ears? Both, I said. Whatever you can get, fast. Within 24 hours, he had Rachel's schedule mapped out tighter than a base patrol rotation. She was still living in the house, still driving the same silver Highlander, still posting the occasional filtered photo of the kids at brunch like everything was just fine. But it wasn't fine. Not even close. The first big flag came on a Tuesday afternoon. Trent sent me a few stills from a motion-activated camera placed near a coffee shop 2 blocks from the house. Rachel was there, sitting at a corner table, laughing at something a man across from her said. Mid-40s, good haircut, expensive coat, the kind of guy who always has a business card ready before you even ask. Trent had already run his plates. Name, Derek Slater. Occupation, real estate developer. Also, not divorced, but separated. Known in Vegas real estate circles for flipping distressed properties and networking with well-off clients, especially women. Had his license suspended once for unethical practices, but got it back on appeal. He wasn't a guy meeting Rachel for the first time. That much was obvious. The photos told the story plain as day. The body language, the familiarity, the way she leaned in, smiling like a teenager at prom. I'd seen enough to confirm my gut. But Trent wasn't done. Over the next few days, he tracked their meetings. A dinner off the strip. A day at an indoor climbing gym. Another coffee run, this time with Rachel wearing one of those oversized sweaters I'd bought her last Christmas. Everything about it felt rehearsed, like a routine they'd settled into a long time ago. I asked Trent how far back he could dig. He grunted. Give me a day. By the next afternoon, I had cell tower logs, geolocation matches, and time-stamped doorbell cam footage from neighbors Trent had paid under the table. I don't know how he got it all, and I didn't ask. But it showed Derek had been showing up regularly. Always on weekdays, always during school hours, always after Rachel had posted about working from home. It was clean. Almost too clean. But not clean enough. While Trent ran point, I went back through the prenup Rachel had signed before we married. I remembered it because her father insisted on it. He was old school and didn't want some army guy draining her inheritance. Joke's on him, because I never touched a cent of it. I worked for everything we had. I sat with Donovan, my lawyer, and laid it all out. I showed him the documents and the photos. The dates. The patterns. He flipped through the prenup slowly, like he was reading a map to buried treasure. Then he smiled. There was a clause, barely a paragraph, about cohabitation during separation and public relationship conduct in proximity to marital assets. Fancy talk, but it boiled down to this. If Rachel engaged in a relationship involving shared routines or overnight visits prior to a finalized divorce, she'd trigger a financial freeze on her trust until a full hearing. Rachel didn't just cross the line. She sprinted over it. Donovan filed the motion that same afternoon. By the end of the week, Rachel's access to her trust was locked. Not seized, just frozen. She could still access her salary and checking account. But the cushy financial cushion her father left her? Gone. Indefinitely. And she didn't see it coming. Her attorney, some guy named Lowell with too much cologne and not enough sense, called Donovan in a panic, asking for a meeting. Donovan told him they'd have to wait until we were ready. I didn't smile when I heard the news. There wasn't any joy in it. But I'll tell you what I did feel. Control. For the first time since landing stateside, I had the upper hand. I wasn't chasing. I was planning. Acting. And Rachel? She'd just felt her first real consequence. This wasn't revenge. This was the opening move. I don't know what hurt more, finding out Rachel had betrayed me, or realizing just how deep she'd been digging the hole behind my back. At first, I thought maybe it was recent. Some rebound fluke. People crack under pressure, and I'd been gone nearly a year. But the more I started connecting the dots, the clearer it got. This wasn't some accident. This was a plan. I was sitting in my truck outside a Waffle House the morning it clicked. Trent, my buddy from the service, had sent me a batch of time-stamped photos the night before. He's got a drone license, a few favors owed to him by local PIs, and a habit of treating surveillance like a hobby. And man, I owed him a steak dinner after this. In one of the pictures, Derek Slater, that smug, grinning real estate type, was pulling into a driveway 2 houses down from mine. Not parked. Pulling in with a clipboard in one hand and a realtor in tow. The for sale sign out front wasn't even down yet. At first glance, maybe he was just investing. But then I checked the timestamp. For months ago, I was still overseas. still writing letters home and folding paper stars to send to Caleb's third-grade class. Meanwhile, this guy was measuring fences and flirting with my wife in broad daylight. I sipped my coffee, chewing on the inside of my cheek. This wasn't new. This was organized. So I started going back through everything. Rachel's social media posts, calendar entries, little things. I had a backup from her old phone in the cloud. She didn't know I'd synced it to my account years ago when we set up the family plan. The first message I saw between them, Rachel and Derek, was from over a year ago. 12 months, give or take. Nothing explicit, just coffee plans and catching up. Friendly stuff. But even back then, the tone was too warm, too familiar. And it never stopped. It turned into late-night texts, inside jokes, then full-on calendar appointments marked as PDA prep or spin class. I've been in combat zones. I've spotted snipers using just a shimmer of light off glass. This was no different. The signs were there. I just hadn't been looking. Worse still were the texts between Rachel and her sister, Lindsay. Turns out Rachel had been planting seeds with the kids, especially Sophie. Stuff like, "Daddy's always gone. He chooses war over us. Derek's here. He shows up." I read one message where Sophie said she didn't want to FaceTime with me because I was probably too busy with army stuff. That one hit like a punch in the ribs. Rachel was turning my kids into strangers. Then I remembered something Sophie said on our last video call. She told me Derek had taken them to the science museum, the same one I used to take them to every spring before I deployed. I brushed it off as awkward at the time, thought maybe he was a friend of Rachel's or just helping out. But looking back, it was more than that. Derek wasn't just seeing Rachel. He was slipping into my family like a new pair of shoes. And Rachel? She was opening the door for it. Quietly. Steadily. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. I printed out the real estate records. Derek had made an offer on the neighboring house 6 months ago. All cash. Closed in 30 days. Rachel hadn't said a word about it in any of our rare conversations. Probably figured I'd never find out. But I did. I went by that house myself. Not inside, just circled the block a few times. The backyard shared a line with ours. Our old fire pit? Visible from his upstairs bedroom. If he moved in, he'd be able to wave to my kids over the fence. Have barbecues with them on weekends. Coach their little league games. That was the moment I stopped thinking this was about Rachel cheating. This was about erasure. They weren't just playing house. They were replacing me brick by brick, memory by memory. I spent the next few days meeting with Donovan, my lawyer, hammering down custody defenses. I gave him everything I had. Screenshots, timeline notes, public records. I wasn't going to let a man who knew nothing about me or my kids walk into their lives like I'd never existed. Rachel thought she could rewrite the story. But I'm still here. Still their father. And I'm not going anywhere. There's something that shifts in your gut when you stop thinking this is just betrayal and you realize it's strategy. Up until now, I told myself Rachel was spiraling, making reckless decisions. Maybe she'd fallen under the charm of a smooth-talking developer and lost her bearings. That made it easier to digest, easier to believe she could be reasoned with. But Trent sent me something that morning that blew that theory clean out of the water. It was a PDF, harmless at first glance. A scanned email chain between Derek Slater and a relocation consultant. The subject line said, Lisbon expansion timeline. I opened it expecting maybe another property deal, something real estate related. But what I saw hit me in a way nothing else had so far. There were school applications, visa instructions, language transition programs for children, even a projected closing date for a villa just outside Lisbon, Portugal. Not another state, not another county, another continent. They weren't just playing house or fooling around anymore. They were planning an escape, and they were taking my children with them. I called Trent immediately. How solid is this? I asked. Rock solid, he said. I intercepted it from a laptop sync in the cloud. It's Rachel's MacBook. She's been sending documents from it while using Derek's hotspot. Sloppy move. My hand tightened on the steering wheel. I was parked behind a grocery store, gripping the phone like it could throttle back. That's when I decided to get into the house. Legally, I still had a right to enter. Rachel hadn't filed any restraining orders, and my name was still on the title. Donovan advised caution, but I needed to lay eyes on the place myself. I needed to see what she was hiding. I waited until a Saturday morning when I knew she'd be out with the kids. Trent tracked them heading toward a yoga studio and brunch spot. I drove to the house, still had my key, and walked right in. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. There were new photos on the hallway walls. Not mine. Not ours. Just the kids. Solo shots. Some professional, some clearly taken by someone else's phone. Rachel was nowhere in them either, which somehow made it worse. Like she was trying to erase every trace of me from the visual history of that house. The furniture was rearranged. Different pillows. My recliner was gone. She donated it, apparently. The garage had storage bins stacked in a new system, labeled by season, by school year. Neat. Precise. Like they were preparing for something. I searched quietly, carefully, not trying to make a mess. Upstairs in the master closet, tucked behind an old shoebox of holiday cards, I found it. A sealed yellow envelope. No markings. Heavy. I opened it right there on the bed and felt something tighten in my chest. Inside were architectural blueprints. A property layout with notes scribbled in pen. Sophie's room. Guest loft addition. Patio redesign. Tiled edge. The house matched the villa from the email thread. It was 2 blocks from a private school Derek had also mentioned. There was even a mock-up of a new family crest on the side of the file. No joke. A crest. It had a tree, initials in cursive, and a ribbon underneath that read Novo Comico. I didn't speak Portuguese, but Google translated it fast enough. New beginning. That's when I realized this wasn't just about getting away. This was replacement. A fresh start without me. And they were dragging my kids along for the ride. I sat down on the edge of the bed and let it all settle. I could hear Sophie's voice in my head. Her tone lately had changed. More guarded. More distant. Last week on the phone, she'd said, "Mom says you love your job more than us." I remember laughing awkwardly. "That's not true, kiddo. You know that." She was quiet. Then said, "Maybe." Caleb had started calling Derek Uncle D. That's what Trent told me he'd overheard at the coffee shop. One of those casual moments kids say things thinking it's normal. Rachel had coached them into this. Carefully. Over time. She hadn't just tried to take them from me physically. She'd been working on them emotionally, one conversation at a time, chipping away at their image of me until I was just a shadow. And that was the line in the sand. That was the part one couldn't walk away from. They could lie, scheme, plot. But nobody was going to twist my children into thinking their father had abandoned them. That day, I walked out with the envelope and the blueprints in hand. I didn't take anything else. Not even the photos. Let her notice it later. Let her feel the air shift when she realized I'd seen it. The clock was ticking now. And Rachel? She was going to learn just how carefully I'd been watching. You can only take so many hits before instinct takes over. By now, I'd gathered enough to know this wasn't just a messy divorce. Rachel wasn't just stepping out on me. She and Derek were engineering something bigger, moving pieces, turning my kids against me, and laying down blueprints in another country like I'd never existed. But instinct told me there was more. Something uglier under the surface. So I called in a professional. His name was Mitch Fallon, a private investigator who'd worked everything from white-collar fraud to missing persons. Guy wore worn boots and a ball cap with a busted logo, but his eyes were sharp. He didn't ask why I needed help. Just said, "You want character or conduct?" "Both," I replied. "And go deep." He nodded and walked off like he already knew where to start. A week later, I got a call. "Meet me in person," he said. Too much to explain over the phone. We met at a diner out on the edge of town. Mitch slid into the booth across from me, dropped a thick manila folder on the table, and said, "You were right about Derek Slater." I opened the file and started reading. Turns out, Derek's real estate empire was built on a whole lot of dust and smoke. He'd been involved in at least 4 property deals where investors lost large sums, and every time, he slid out untouched. 2 shell companies in Delaware. 1 offshore account in Malta. On paper, he looked clean. But follow the money, and it told a different story. Mitch had traced transactions between Derek and a pair of women, both widowed, both inherited property portfolios. Same pattern. Derek offered to help manage their assets, charmed his way in, then slowly moved funds into LLCs with vague paperwork. Each woman ended up selling off their properties under pressure, and Derek walked away richer while they were left with legal headaches and empty retirement accounts. These women were too embarrassed to go public, Mitch said. One of them tried to sue. He buried her under paperwork until she dropped it. Rachel wasn't the first target. She was just the next one. But it got worse. "Your son," Mitch said, voice low. "You need to sit with this part." I braced myself. Mitch pulled out a short report. It wasn't flashy. Just a simple write-up from an in-home counselor that Rachel had been using part-time for Sophie and Caleb. The counselor had kept quiet, probably afraid of getting dragged into a custody mess. But Mitch had reached out, posed as a family mediator, and gotten her talking. Caleb had told her something a few weeks back. Said, Uncle D pushed him once. Hard. Shouted at him. Told him to act right when he spilled juice on the patio. Rachel wasn't home at the time. Sophie was upstairs, and Caleb had gone quiet after it. The counselor noted a change in demeanor, subtle signs of intimidation. I closed the file. My hands were shaking. I've seen a lot of ugly things in life. But nothing makes your blood run colder than knowing some outsider laid hands on your child while you were gone, while you were trusting the wrong people. He left a bruise on Caleb's shoulder, Mitch said. Didn't show for long, but it's in the notes. And I got a picture the kid drew. He handed it to me. Crayon on paper. A little stick figure standing off to the side, a tall one in the center with big hands and angry eyebrows. Another stick figure, small, bent over, with a red mark on the arm. The word juice written across the corner. Caleb had drawn it. I recognized his handwriting. I took that paper and didn't say a word for about 5 minutes. I gave Mitch a cash bonus on top of his fee. Told him he did good. Real good. Then I drove straight to Donovan's office. I laid everything out. Derek's real estate cons, the manipulation of those women, the file from the counselor, the drawing. Donovan listened without interrupting. He flipped through the prenup again, slower this time. There's a clause here, he said, pointing. Negligent exposure of minors to individuals with a history of litigation, violence, or financial exploitation. It was tucked into a parenting provision your father-in-law insisted on. I didn't even remember that part. But now? It was my golden key. We use this, Donovan said, and we force a court hearing. This isn't about infidelity anymore. It's about endangerment, stability, and custody integrity. Good, I said. Because this wasn't just about a broken marriage. This was about protecting my children. And now, I finally had the leverage to do it. By the time I decided to set the trap, I knew exactly what kind of man I was dealing with. Derek Slater wasn't just a liar or a manipulator. He was a planner, slick, smooth, always 3 steps ahead. The kind of guy who smiles with his teeth but watches your hands. You don't beat a man like that with emotion. You beat him with timing, with quiet patience. And I had both. I sat down with Donovan, my lawyer, and we came up with the bait. A fake settlement meeting. Make it look like I was finally giving up. Like I was tired. Like I wanted to wrap things up quietly and move on. We drafted a short document. Joint custody transition and settlement framework. All fake. Looked real. Sounded legal. A few placeholders for Rachel's signature, just enough to make her think she had the upper hand. We leaked it through her lawyer, Lowell, who took the bait like a fish to a worm. The meeting was set for a Thursday morning, 10 a.m., neutral office suite downtown. Rachel, Derek, Lowell, Donovan, and me. That's what they thought. What they didn't know was that we'd wired the room. Donovan hired a retired tech from the sheriff's department to install 2 small mics, one in a wall clock, another in the air vent. There was also a camera in the lamp base. Legal? Technically, yes. Nevada's a one-party consent state. And I was that party. The trap was set. But before that meeting ever happened, something else hit me straight in the gut. Sophie told me the truth. She called me the night before. Said she didn't want to talk long because Mom doesn't like when I get too chatty with you. Her voice was quiet, like she was hiding under a blanket. I have to tell you something, she whispered. I closed the door to my hotel room and sat on the edge of the bed. What is it, honey? It's about Caleb. That name alone made me freeze. She hesitated. Then she said, Derek pushed him again. Harder this time. Caleb cried. And when I told Mom, she told me not to make drama. My blood ran cold. What did Derek say? I asked. He told Caleb he was clumsy and needed to grow up. Then he slammed the cabinet door. I don't think he knew I was watching. I clenched my jaw so tight it hurt. You did the right thing telling me, I said. Thank you for trusting me. I promised her I'd keep her safe. I didn't tell her about the meeting the next day. That wasn't her burden to carry. But it lit a fire in me. That wasn't a trap anymore. It was an ambush. The next morning, I walked into the meeting calm as a lake in winter. Rachel wore a sharp blouse and that same smug expression she'd perfected over the last few weeks. Derek was seated beside her like he belonged there, flipping through the fake agreement. Donovan went through the motions like a pro, highlighting the flexible relocation clause, the phased handoff plan. He asked them what they thought. Rachel said it seemed reasonable. Derek leaned back and smiled like he'd already won. Then he said the words that sealed his fate. Well, we'll be out of the country soon anyway, so it's good to wrap this up. Donovan paused. Out of the country? Rachel glanced at him, wide-eyed. Derek kept going. Portugal. Didn't she tell you? We're finalizing the villa next month. The kids'll love it. They already speak some Spanish. Portuguese come easy. She shot him a look, but it was too late. Donovan clicked his pen and said, Thanks for confirming. That's when I stood up. You're not taking my kids anywhere, I said. Derek opened his mouth to argue, but Donovan raised a hand. We have it recorded. Every word. Along with the prior statement about physical aggression toward Caleb. Rachel's face went white. You lied to me, she said to Derek, voice cracking. He reached for her hand. She yanked it back. I didn't wait for the fallout. I turned, walked out of that room, and called Mitch, the PI, and told him to get the files ready. I had a sheriff's deputy waiting on standby with the latest affidavit from the counselor, plus Sophie's statement written in my handwriting, ready to be notarized. This wasn't about leverage anymore. It was about protection and justice. And finally, I had both. There's a moment, right before a fight starts, when everything gets quiet. I felt it in the field, seconds before boots hit dirt, before that first order breaks the silence. That pause, when your hands go still but your mind is moving like wildfire. That's exactly what it felt like sitting in that final conference room. Long oak table. 2 pitchers of water. Folders stacked in neat piles. Rachel sat across from me with her lawyer, Lowell, trying to look composed, but her hands kept tugging at the cuff of her blazer. Derek sat next to her, arrogant as ever, thumbing through a glossy brochure for something I didn't care to see. His lawyer looked like he belonged in a magazine, slick suit, gelled hair, probably called himself counselor when ordering coffee. To Derek's left was a man in a gray jacket I hadn't met before. He looked plain, average, but I knew who he was. I'd brought him there myself. Agent Holloway, Federal Fraud Division, sat quietly, sipping his water like he had all day. He wasn't here to talk. He was here to listen. Donovan opened the meeting. Professional, sharp, ran through a short agenda, mostly legal housekeeping. Then he gave me a small nod. It was time. I opened my folder and slid the first document across the table. This is a notarized affidavit from a licensed counselor who treated my son Caleb. It includes observations of physical aggression by Derek Slater, as witnessed and reported by my daughter. Rachel stiffened. You're bringing this here? Yes, I said, because this isn't just about custody anymore. This is about endangerment. Before Derek could interrupt, Donovan laid out the next piece, bank records, property filings, wire transfers from Derek's shell companies linked to 2 women in Arizona and California. Each transaction traced to fraudulent real estate deals, each under federal scrutiny. Then came the big one. I reached into my folder and pulled out a flash drive. Agent Holloway leaned forward and inserted it into the laptop set up at the end of the table. We watched as the screen lit up with security footage, courtesy of the surveillance Trent and Mitch had arranged. One clip showed Derek admitting, on camera, to the Portugal relocation. Another, from earlier, captured him bragging over a phone call about how easy it was to flip trust-backed properties when emotions were high. No one said a word. Lowell's face went pale. Rachel's hands dropped into her lap. Her shoulders sank. For the first time since this started, I didn't see anger in her eyes. I saw realization. She turned slowly toward Derek. You told me none of this was real. Derek shifted in his seat, suddenly nervous. They're bluffing. That's edited. No, Agent Holloway said, speaking for the first time. It's not. He stood up, calmly reached into his coat, and placed a small black folder on the table. Mr. Slater, he said, you are under investigation for wire fraud, conspiracy, and financial exploitation across state lines. You're not under arrest at this moment, but I would advise you not to leave the county. Derek's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Rachel stared at him, wide-eyed, lips parted. She looked like someone who had just seen behind the curtain finally. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel triumph. Just steady, cold confirmation. The truth, laid bare. Rachel turned to me. Did you know all this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I had my suspicions, I said. Then I got the facts. She swallowed hard, then looked at Agent Holloway. If I cooperate, if I provide what I know, can that help? He nodded slowly. Yes, it'll matter. That was the moment. Rachel wasn't just a witness anymore. She became a witness for the government. She pushed her chair back, stood up, and walked to the other side of the table. She didn't sit next to me, but she didn't sit next to Derek either. She stood behind Donovan, arms crossed. Derek looked between us, red-faced. "You're all insane. You think I'm going down for this? I've got attorneys." Agent Holloway just said, "You've got 48 hours before we unseal the indictment. I suggest you use them wisely." The meeting ended there. No handshakes. No eye contact. Just a slow, heavy walk out of that room, the air so thick you could taste the tension. Rachel didn't speak to me as we left. She didn't need to. She knew what she had done. And she finally knew who Derek really was. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time, I wasn't the one under fire. 6 months. That's how long it's been since we walked out of that conference room and Derek Slater finally lost control of the narrative he built. He's sitting in a federal holding facility now, waiting out a slow, grinding series of court dates and grand jury hearings. He still thinks he's going to talk his way out of it. But his charm doesn't work so well in Orange. Turns out, when you cross state lines with bad money, lie to the wrong people, and leave a trail of broken families in your wake, there's not much smooth talking can do. Me? I've been rebuilding. I moved into a ranch-style house on the east edge of Henderson. 3 bedrooms, no frills, a decent stretch of land, and a work shed in the back I've already turned into a private gym and office. The kitchen's got a window that faces the sunrise. Every morning, I brew a cup of black coffee and just watch. It's the kind of quiet I used to dream about overseas. Funny how you forget what peace sounds like until it finally shows up and sits down beside you. Sophie and Caleb stay with me 4 days a week now. It's joint custody on paper, but the kids always ask to stay a little longer when Sunday night rolls around. Rachel agreed to everything after the dust settled. I think some part of her knew she'd gone too far, too fast, and couldn't fix it with more words. She moved into an apartment closer to town. She's civil now. Not warm, but not cold either. Just trying to be steady. I can work with that. Sophie's back to humming when she reads. That used to be her thing. She'd curl up on the couch with a book and make these little music box noises like her thoughts had a melody. For a long time, that sound disappeared. Now it's back, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't hit me like a lump in the throat the first time I heard it again. Caleb's doing better too. He's seeing a counselor once a week, mostly just drawing and playing with wooden puzzles, but he's opening up more. He talks about dinosaurs again. He laughs without flinching. And sometimes, when he thinks I'm not looking, he watches my hands, like he's checking to see if they'll ever slam a cabinet or raise in anger. They won't, but I let him watch, just to know he's safe. I also did something for myself. I started a company, Callan Risk Solutions. Private security and logistics consulting. Small staff right now, just 4 guys I trust from my Ranger days. We handle asset protection, high-risk escort jobs, background investigations for companies that don't want to be surprised. It's honest work, clean, and it puts my skill set to good use without putting me back in harm's way. We even signed our first corporate contract last month, quarterly retainer with a major shipping firm. Pays the bills and then some. Funny thing is, the first time I felt like myself again wasn't at home or in the office. It was at a community college career fair. I was there helping a friend run a booth on cyber defense programs when I bumped into a woman at the coffee table. She had a folder tucked under one arm, red hair pulled back in a ponytail, and glasses that looked like they were one sneeze away from falling off her face. We reached for the sugar packet at the same time, and she laughed. "Recruiter instincts," she said. "Always gotta stay caffeinated." Her name was Lena Hart, recruiter for a local university that specializes in tech and veteran outreach. We got to talking about transition programs, veteran employment pipelines, things I'd usually half listen to. But this time, I listened. She was sharp, funny, didn't ask a million questions about the Army. She just treated me like a man who'd lived a life and didn't need it explained. I didn't ask for her number that day. But she gave me her card, said, "If you ever want to talk transition programs, or just share war stories over coffee." I kept the card. Still have it. Haven't called her yet. But maybe I will. I'm not rushing anything. I've learned how fast things can fall apart when you sprint before your legs are steady. Right now, I've got my kids, my home, and work I believe in. I've got Sunday mornings filled with pancakes and cartoons. I've got quiet nights where I fall asleep to the sound of Sophie's music or Caleb's drawings rustling on the kitchen table. I fought a war overseas. Then I fought one at home. And now? Now the fighting's done. I didn't come back the man I was, but maybe, just maybe, I'm becoming the man I was always meant to be. Share your thoughts in the comments. Was Rachel a victim of manipulation too, or was she complicit the whole way through? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.